Hello and welcome to Auburn High School Bracketology. My name is Tripp Upton and I'm here live from the AHS Mass Media Entertainment studio, and we're going to be talking about the bracket for 7A after a wild week of high school football. Upsets galore up in Huntsville, business as usual for Thompson. Auburn didn't look very good. If you're watching this video, you probably scored as many points as Auburn did this past week, and meanwhile Mobile, a lot of things stayed the same. But we're going to talk all about it and see what teams are going to be slotted where to be trying to compete for a Blue Mountain Trophy. First, I want to take a look into Region 1. That's down in Mobile. The Mary Montgomery Vikings, they're 4-0. They are undefeated overall, but they're undefeated in region play. They share the lead for the region with the Fairhope Pirates. Fairhope having a pretty easy start to the year. Their next 3 games, though, looking very tough for them. The Pirates are going to have a tough road to the playoffs, especially having to still play Mary Montgomery. Daphne in that 3rd spot right there. They're tied with Baker, but the Trojans just edged over the Hornets right there for the 3 and 4 seed. Looking at the rest of the field, Davidson and Foley both tied at 1 and 3. Both those teams face elimination this weekend. The Warriors and the Lions need to survive in advance. And then meanwhile, Robertsdale and Alma Bryant both eliminated from the playoffs. Golden Bears and Hurricanes, they can still make an upset, but I don't think that they're going to be making it back anytime soon. So obviously, it's a week of Mobile that it's a very on brand for what they've had so far. Some big matchups I want to take a look at. First is the de facto region championship in Fairhope versus Mary Montgomery. The winner will take sole possession of first place in that game for the remainder of the season. I think the Vikings could be the favorites in that one, but it's going to be a great one down in Fairhope. Next, Baker v. Foley. Hornets getting in with a win. The Lions are out with a loss. So Foley needs to win that game. Baker can afford a loss, but I think for seeding, they definitely would want to win as well. Robertsdale v. Davidson. Nothing really to play for other than pride for Robertsdale, but the Davidson Warriors can get out with a loss. So another survive and advance team in that state. And finally, Daphne versus Alma Bryant. The Trojans in with a win. Daphne does have the tiebreak over Baker due to head-to-head, and that is big for them. Next, let's take a look over in Region 2. That will be the region that we are in Auburn. And it's going to be one that you're going to watch out for all across. Obviously, that it's changed a lot. There's still 2 teams at the top, especially after Auburn lost in a blowout fashion to the Central Phoenix City Red Devils. But let's take a look at the standings right here. First, Central in first place. That's going to be a team that they're going to be rolling throughout the rest of the season, and they're going to be dominant all throughout. Carver tied for first. They're a good team. They really just haven't played a lot of the top contenders, but that starts this week for them. Auburn and Opelika tied for that 3rd spot. The Tigers did beat the Bulldogs earlier in the season, obviously, so they got the head-to-head there. But both those teams could lock in potential playoffs with a win. Obviously, Dothan still in the mix here at 5. They play 2 of the weaker teams in this region. So that game against Auburn to end the season could be big for them, even though they lost to Opelika and a last-minute touchdown for the Bulldogs. The Wolves still on the prowl. Smith Station 1 and 3. They take on Auburn this week, but the Panthers needed another survive in advance for them. Meanwhile, Enterprise and Jag, the Cats of the division, the Wildcats and the Jaguars, both out. So obviously, with what this looks like, you have 4 top contenders, a 5th one in Dothan, really, again, in the hunt. I don't think Smith Station is going to win to be able to try and make a playoff push, and then Enterprise and Jag both playing for pride for those teams. But there was some good games this week, especially when it comes to seeding. First is let's take a look at the Carver, Montgomery, and Central game. The winner will take sole possession of first place. That is going to be massive for them moving forward. It is in the Crampton Bowl, so maybe some hometown cooking for the Montgomery School and Carver Montgomery can help them out, but I just think Central's offense is too good after seeing it firsthand. Next, Smith Station hosting the Auburn Tigers. Smith Station has not beaten Auburn since 2013. Fun fact, that was our executive producer, Jared Diller's senior year of high school when he was a graduate of Smith Station. Tigers are in with a win. Panthers out with a loss. That could be big for Auburn to try to rebuild momentum heading into a tough game the following week at home, senior night against Carver Montgomery. Enterprise and Opelika. This is a big game in the region standings for Opelika. Bulldogs could push their ways in with a win, but Auburn and Opelika are tied. Auburn does have the tiebreaker if it would come down to a last-in scenario, and that is because of the Dothan Wolves. And I want to talk about Dothan real quickly because this is a team that is on the hunt right now. Wolves are out with a loss. They must win out. Their next two games are against two of the bottom teams in the region in Jag and Smith Station. They play the Jaguars this week. They play Smith Station next week. It could come down to senior night, depending on what Auburn does against Carver Montgomery, depending on how Opelika finishes the rest of the season, especially with that game later in the year against Central for the Bulldogs. If Dothan can win those two and Auburn loses one of the next two, that could be a play-in game because if they both tie with 4 and 3, Dothan would get in via head-to-head. So that's something that Auburn fans are wanting to avoid, and I know that going on the road to play a team like Dothan is going to be very tough, but I believe in Coach Etheridge and those Tigers. They're going to get back on the grind. They're going to win. I think they could win out in region and try and lock up that number 2 seed. But we're going to talk about that once we get to the bracket itself. Let's go look at Region 3 for the state of Alabama. That's a lot of your Birmingham teams. And this is another region that Auburn needs to watch out for. This is who you're going to be playing in the first round, whether it's the 2 seed or the 3 seed or even the 1 seed, depending on how the Tigers finish. It's very important for them if they want to have a chance at making the second round. So looking at the standings right here, obviously the Thompson Warriors, after knocking off Hewitt-Trussville in the de facto region championship game, they have sole possession of first place. I think they're going to lock that up this week, and Thompson is just dominant this year with Trent Seaborn as always, unfortunately. Hewitt-Trussville sliding into that number 2 spot. They're 3-1. They have a lot of tiebreakers over the teams below them. So the Huskies could 100% lock up the second spot coming very soon. Vestavia Hills, I have them slotted to that number 3 team, but they are tied right now with Hillcrest Tuscaloosa, Hoover, and Prattville. The Rebels, the Patriots, the Buccaneers, and the Lions all slid in. It's going to be chaos these last few weeks, especially with some of those teams finally getting to play each other. I know Vestavia coming off a big win against Prattville, and they play Hoover coming up soon. They already, I think, own the tiebreaker with Hillcrest Tuscaloosa. So that'll be pretty big for them. Oak Mountain could not beat Hoover for the first time in program history this past weekend. And so they are on the brink of elimination. And then finally, the Tuscaloosa County Wildcats out at an 0-4 record. They would need a lot of shenanigans to get in, so they're pretty much out. So after taking a look at that, this Birmingham region to me just screams that you have a top 2 contenders. You have Thompson and you have Hewitt-Trussville. But I think looking at who could get in, I could 100% see a scenario where Hoover gets in, Vestavia could get in. I could see a scenario where Hillcrest Tuscaloosa is out. What if they get in? Could Prattville, I know they just came off a demoralizing loss to Vestavia Hills. What if the Lions make a playoff push? So many of these scenarios that could happen in the next 2 or 3 weeks we're going to be talking about. But looking ahead at this week, a lot of those could at least try and take into form or at least give one team a leg up. So let's take a look at it right here. First game I have to watch would be Thompson versus Hillcrest Tuscaloosa. The Patriots do have the tiebreaker over the Hoover Buccaneers, but they still have yet to play Prattville. They lost to Vestavia. And so the Hillcrest Tuscaloosa Patriots, I don't think they're going to win this game, but this could be one that you don't want to you want to at least build momentum for the rest of the season. Warriors need 2 out of the next 3 to officially clinch the 1 seed, and so I would not be surprised if they can win this one and just continue to build momentum. Next up, Prattville. The Lions will host Hewitt-Trussville. The Huskies are in officially with a win. That will give them a tiebreaker over a lot of those teams tied at 2-2, so they're pretty much locking up the 2 seed with that win. Prattville did lose to Vestavia Hills, and they lost to Hoover earlier in the season. A big matchup for them next week because if they lose that game, they'll be effectively out. They'll actually be probably eliminated if they lose today or next on Friday. So Hewitt-Trussville, if they can pull the upset at home, they're going to keep their shot as getting in. They need to have a lot of work to do against Hillcrest if they lose that one. Next up, Vestavia Hills. The Rebels hosting the Oak Mountain Eagles. Rebels, they do own the tie breaks over Hillcrest and Prattville. They're going to play Hoover last week of the season. That is going to be such a big matchup. The Buccaneers and the Rebels to potentially lock up a 3 or 4 seed. That could be really exciting for them. Eagles are out with a loss at 1-3. They just really struggled against some of the middle teams of here, and they play a lot tougher teams to come up. So Oak Mountain, I think, is going to probably be out, barring an upset on the road of Vestavia Hills. Hoover, the Buccaneers need to win this game. I know they're at 2-2, but they sit near the bottom of the tiebreakers, especially sitting at number 5 right now. They need to win. They still have Thompson and Vestavia Hills on their schedule, so a loss here would effectively put them out, especially with Thompson coming and playing them very, very soon. They do own the Prattville tiebreak, which is good. So they might want the Lions to maybe cause some chaos and pull off some upsets and help them negate some of the losses, especially the loss they took to Hillcrest Tuscaloosa earlier in the season. So moving on to our last region of the day, talking about the messiest region in all of Alabama sports. I want you guys to hear this. So when I was doing my seeding, and you're going to see my seeding in a moment, I wanted to first talk about what I've had to do to seed these. Because there are currently 3 teams tied for number 1, and there's 3 teams tied for the next spot. And because of some of the fact, and I'm going to talk about them when we get to them, because of that, I had to make up a rule or a tiebreaker because obviously I can't use some of those end of season tiebreakers because they haven't played everybody yet and they haven't played each other yet. But there's 2 teams that I had to just go, all right, what's your strength of schedule? And who have you played so far? And if that gave them the slight seeding bump in my if the season ended today look at right now. And we're going to talk about it when we get there. But first, let's take a look at the standings. Austin, they lost last week, which throws this whole region into chaos. They are sitting at 3-1, and they're the number 1 seed because they do own the tiebreaker over the next 2 teams, the teams I was talking about earlier, the Florence Falcons and the Sparkman Senators. Florence and Sparkman at 3-1, they've only lost to Austin. So, okay, next let's look at the tiebreak I usually use, which is out of region. How well did you do? Who did you beat? Both those teams lost all their out of region games. I think Sparkman 0-3. Florence 0-2, but they play a very tough team at the end of the season. I don't think in Oxford. I don't think they're going to win that game. So they will not get. Neither team will get any region points. And so I had to basically look and say, okay, Florence has played, Bob Jones, James Clemens, and Albertville. One's played Bob Jones, James Clemens, and Huntsville. So that's why Florence got the slight bump over Sparkman. The Falcons flying high over the Senators on that one. Bob Jones is in that 4 spot for right now. They're tied with James Clemens. They're tied with Huntsville. They do have the tiebreaker over those teams, and so they get the slight bump. The Patriots over the Jets and the Panthers sounds like an NFL playoff scenario itself. Meanwhile, the Albertville Aggies 1-3. They need a win this week to officially stay in contention. And then Grissom, poor Grissom, 0-4. They are out. They're Albertville's only region loss. And so Grissom, the Tigers, getting probably their offseason started early, looking ahead to next season. So next, let's take a look at, again, I said that earlier, what's going on in Huntsville, what's going on in Rocket City, because it takes a rocket scientist to figure out what to do with some of these teams and what they're going to see. But I do want to take a look at some of the matchups. I have 3 matchups here that we're going to look at. First, I want to look at Bob Jones hosting the Austin Black Bears. Black Bears are in with a win, but unfortunately, the Bob Jones Patriots own the tiebreaker over James Clemens, but they still have to play Huntsville, who they're tied with right now. Next up, James Clemens, speaking of the Jets, they host Sparkman. The Senators are in with a win at 3-1. But the Jets do own the tiebreaker for themselves over Huntsville, but they did lose to Bob Jones. That's why James Clemens is slotted at that number 5, just below Bob Jones, just above Huntsville. That's really the reason why that region broke down the way it is, because of James Clemens, the only team to play both the teams that they're tied with. Next up, Florence v. Grissom. Grissom obviously could be a spoiler in this game. It wouldn't amount to much because I don't have much of a playoff push yet, but Falcons are in with a win. Florence would love to pick up that one and build momentum, especially given the fact that they're not going to be able to rely on those out-of-region points. So if Florence and Sparkman, they do play each other near the end of the season, so that will eventually get resolved. But for right now, Florence having to play a slightly harder schedule is the reason they're above that one. So now, finally, we get to take a look at what the brackets look like. First, we have the bracket for what the season would look like if it ended today. So we're going to take a look at that. First, Thompson v. Opelika in that top left region. The Warriors basically clinching that division very, very soon. Opelika right now, they only are 4 because of the tie break with Auburn. They lost to Auburn earlier in the season. Could they move up? I think they definitely could, but we'll talk about that later. Fairhope, the number 2 team currently, they're going to take on Bob Jones in the first round. The Falcons, they would definitely like to host a playoff game, or the Buccaneers would like to host that playoff game. The Central Phoenix City Red Devils will take on Hillcrest Tuscaloosa in the first round of the season ended today. Central, right now, I have them as the top team in Region 2, and they will be taking on the number 4 team, Hillcrest Tuscaloosa. And finally, Florence and Daphne. The Falcons would be actually hosting the playoff game, but instead of Bob Jones, it would be against the Daphne Trojans. Looking at the other side of the bracket, Austin v. Baker, the Black Bears, would be hosting that game. Even again, tied for first place, but they have wins over both Florence and Sparkman. Carver Montgomery, I have them hosting right now just because they're the only undefeated team. I don't know if they stay there. They do have a tough end of the schedule with Central, Auburn, and Opelika close to the end of the year. And they'd be playing Vestavia Hills currently in the first round. Mary Montgomery, the winner of Region 1, would be taking on the last place, would be taking on Sparkman. And finally, Hewitt Trussville would be taking on Auburn. Auburn traveling to take on the Huskies. They would not host a playoff game if the season ended today. So it's imperative that Coach Etheridge and this team continue to stack wins and build towards potentially hosting a playoff game. I mean, and looking at that matchup for Auburn especially, like you would have to play Hewitt Trussville first round, but then you still don't have Thompson, you still don't have Central in your side of the bracket. If you could beat Hewitt Trussville, that could be basically a Final Four game played early if the season were ending today. So I think Auburn, would be on the road, but then you probably would have to head on the road to the winner of, if Sparkman won, if Mary Montgomery wins, you'd be hosting them at home because of the travel rule. And then, maybe you have a rematch with Carver. Maybe you play Vestavia Hills again. I think it'd be really interesting to see how that breaks down if the season ended today. But let's look at what I think, because I think that's what ultimately matters, because this is my show, right? So first up, Thompson. They would play Carver in the first round in my projections. I just don't know. I know Carver, they killed Enterprise last week, and they beat them by a lot worse than Auburn did. But I think they're going to lose to Central. I think they're going to lose to Auburn at home. And I think, they have to play Opelika too. That's going to be a tough game. They could drop all the way down to that last team from Region 2. The winner of the Thompson-Carver game, probably Thompson, would play Daphne and Bob Jones. I think Daphne, the Trojans, are just going to be better down the stretch than Fairhope, and I think they're going to be able to get in and host a playoff game instead of heading on the road. They take on Bob Jones. I think Bob Jones slotted right where they need to be right there, just especially with the log jam that's going on across Region 1 in that 2 spot, or that 4 spot, or 3 or 4 spot. Central Phoenix City, I think they're going to win our region, unfortunately. I'd love for Auburn to come back and win and have some, collapse by the Red Devils, but I just don't think Patrick Nix, the head coach, I don't think Bobby Coleman, the quarterback, are going to let that happen, especially with the defensive masterclass they put on against Case and Myers and this Auburn offense. I have them taking on the Hillcrest Tuscaloosa in the first round of that one. Hillcrest, I think they're going to just, because of their schedule and because of the tiebreakers, are just going to be the team that limps into the playoffs. I don't know if they're going to beat that high-powered Central offense, but Hillcrest could definitely make a name. Maybe they can move up and jump another team, but because of the tiebreakers, I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. Then I have Florence taking on Baker. Baker, I have them moving up slightly. I think they even jump Fairhope because of just the end of the schedule. Fairhope has to play Baker, they have to play Mary Montgomery, and they have to play Daphne. I think Fairhope is just benefiting from an easy schedule right now, and that's going to fall back down. So Baker jumps up. They have to head to Florence to take on the Falcons. But Fairhope, the Pirates, take on Austin in my projections. The Black Bears, they definitely can win that game against Austin. The Black Bears are a good team, but they just lost to Huntsville, so maybe there's a lot of change that could happen. I'd be interested to see where we have Austin projected next week after another round of games, especially in region against some of those tougher teams. I'd love to see that from the Black Bears and kind of see where they're going to go and how they respond to a tough loss. But they would take on Fairhope. I have Auburn still finishing as Region 2, as the second team in Region 2. And I just, truthfully, I believe in Coach Etheridge. I believe in this offense. I think Greg Williams, if he can come back later in the season from injury, he's going to be a dominant force for this defense. I believe in guys like Carnell Jackson and Colin King to step up on this defensive line, because I know that's exactly what they can do. If you look at that game last week, it was 10-0 at halftime, right? And I think the defense is one of the best in the region for us. I just think that the offense, they need to get things settled. J.J. King is going to be a force at running back. We're going to see him a lot in the game plan this week against Smith Station. Kason Myers continuing to develop, getting rid of the turnovers has been his big thing. When they don't turn the ball over, they win football games, and they win football games by a lot. So if he can just take care of the football and put points in the end zone, I think Auburn's going to be able to do that against Smith Station. I think they're going to be able to do that against Carver, against Dothan, and they're going to lock up the number 2 seed and get a rematch against Vestavia Hills that I know that Tigers would have circled in blue ink if they were able to get that one and have a lot of bulletin board material for that one. Looking ahead down to the bottom right of the bracket, Mary Montgomery would be taking on James Clemens. The Vikings, I think, are just going to roll to a region title here. Will they win against a battle-tested James Clemens Jets? I don't know. I mean, it's a Mobile team. But, I mean, they'd host a home game, so we'd have to see. And then Hewitt-Trussville taking on Opelika. I think the Bulldogs should have, lost that game last week against Dothan. They had a 95-yard drive or something like that. I was watching it in the studio. It was big, like an 80-something yard touchdown. So congratulations, Opelika. But I think that the game said more about Dothan and their style of running the football, controlling the clock. That game was over like 20 minutes before the Auburn game was with a running clock. So I think they head on the road at the 3 to face Hewitt-Trussville, with a matchup that I'm sure they'd prefer much more than Thompson. Hewitt-Trussville coming off a loss. I expect to see them to still be dominant. I really like their defense. Special teams had to clear some things up, had a blocked kick, and I'd like to see their offense be a little bit more dynamic. A lot of quarterback runs for the Huskies. I'd like to see them take shots down the field and spread it out a little bit. I think that would work well against Opelika. But, I mean, Opelika can 100% make a run to get into the Elite 8 or Final 4 if they can just match up against the teams well. But anyways, folks, that is all from us at Auburn High School Bracketology. I've been Tripp Upton running through this gauntlet with you this week. And look, this is going to be a big week for all of Alabama high school football. It's not a lot of 1v2 matchups. Obviously, you do have Central and Carver. That might be the only 1v2 matchup other than Region 1 as well, between Mary Montgomery and Fairhope. But it's going to be a great week. It's going to be a lot of movement, definitely around a lot of the tied teams in that 3 and 4 spot. Who's going to be in, who's going to be out. We're going to be at playoff clinching scenarios or potential tiebreaker scenarios, especially with that Dothan, Opelika, Auburn tiebreak. If all those teams finish 4 and 3, who gets in? We don't know yet. So we're going to find that out. But make sure to stay tuned, and we'll be back with you next week for Auburn High School Bracketology with Tripp Upton. Thank you.